Hello, hello. This is Robert Sims today with today's Peace Talk, where I come on to encourage and uplift your spirits. Yesterday we were talking about the George Floyd situation and the involvement or the support of other ethnicities to speak up and to include their voices in this discussion. But one thing I was reminded this morning that the Bible tells us that we don't sorrow as believers as other men sorrow. We have a peace that surpasses all understanding. So don't get it twisted that we are called to speak up and to speak out and to make our voices be known. But we can't allow that to the circumstances and the situations that we see repeatedly. We can't allow it to push us into despair, because this, as I've seen it, every time we see this is traumatic to us, because it seems like there's no justice. It's just us, it seems like. But the Bible says otherwise, and so as believers, we are compelled to lean on the Bible and allow, and again, make expression. There are expressions that we must do. We must express ourselves. We must talk. We must have conversations. We must cry out. We must call for justice. But in the midst of that, don't let it push you into depression. Don't let it push you into despair. Don't let it push you into hopelessness and feeling like you're helpless. As believers, if you're not a believer, come on in. Because God is not just, sometimes people say, where was God when all this happened? That's a good question. So I think the best thing for me to tell you is develop a relationship so you can ask him. But to my answers, where was I when he died on the cross? Where was I? And so there's a lot of dynamics in that question, but my point is, don't allow these situations and the injustice and the circumstances to push you into despair, because we're called to a place of peace. As believers, we are called to peace. He's got peace that you can't understand. So I want to encourage you, like I said yesterday, make a commitment to do something. Make a commitment to allow your talents and abilities to be your expression of revolt or crying out for justice. If you are a dancer, dance. Like I said, if you're a singer, sing. If you're a musician, play. I got a buddy of mine, Tom Cutts, who plays, and he is like a musical activist, as I like to call it, a musical activist. And so you activate your expressions. God gave you those expressions for the sole purpose, well, to give him glory, but also to activate and to cry out. And hey, how you doing? So to do that, we have to use our own expression. If you notice, throughout history, musicians and artists, they always, their expression comes out of the heart of their artistry. And so if you're, every one of us is an artist. Even if you're not a painter, you're not a musician, you're not a poet, there's artistry in you. Hey, babe. So there is an artistry in you. And so you have to allow your artistry, because somebody is your fan. You have a level of fanhood, so to speak. That people look up to you, in other words. You have a sphere of influence in your life. And with your artistry, with your talent, with your abilities, with what you have, what you carry, with your spiritual skill set. I like to call it that. Your spiritual skill set is your skills, your talents, your abilities, your personality, even and your spiritual gifts. All of those I call, so you have a skill set, a natural skill set. There's certain things that you have, but that excludes spiritual skill sets. In other words, it doesn't include your ministry, when it talks about skill set. It doesn't include your the gifts of the Spirit that God has endowed you with. So I like to call it a spiritual skill set, where it takes your talents, it takes your abilities that God has given you. Even your personality is a part of your spiritual skill set. Hey, everyone. Hey, Crystal. Liz Duran, that's my girl. These are what God created you. He put all of these ingredients in a body called you. And he says, I want you to display that, and I want you to cry out. I want you to minister to this world. I want you to pour out the grace and the ability that I've given to you and pour it out on the world. Speak up. Cry out, hey, Aura. And so the Bible tells us, if any man minister, let him minister. If we speak, let him speak as an oracle of God, a mouthpiece of God. If any man minister, let him minister with the ability that God gives, so that God in all things may be glorified. And so take your talents and your abilities, take your personal God-given expressions, and cry out and speak up. Don't be silent. I love that verse, that quote that Martin Luther King says. He says, it's not the voice of my enemies. I want to say that. I'm going to say that every day. It's not the voice of my enemies that I will remember. It is the silence of my friends. If I'm in trouble and I'm on the roadside and my car is broke down, or I'm in need of sustenance, or whatever it is, whatever my need is, and my friends know about it and are quiet, they don't stop to help me and bring it. They may not be able to help change the tire, but they can stop and stand there with me and be supporting and have a conversation with me. So at least I'm not on the roadside by myself. So I say that don't be a friend to the people that are in African American descent. Don't be that, and they be quiet. Don't be quiet. Don't be quiet. But again, I say, as I started before in the beginning, even though we see what we see, make sure you don't allow it to break your peace. Don't allow it to break your peace. God's peace is everlasting. And so you can do something about what we see. Please don't be scared to do something. Don't. Speak up. It may cost you something. I'm going to tell you. People have backlash. People love to do backlash because they want things to stay just the way they are. Hey, Joanne. They want things to stay the way they are. But we won't. This is a new day. This is a 2020. And we're not having it anymore. We're not having it anymore. We're not having it anymore. No. So God is going to give us our way to express. So I want you to pray every day and seek God's face. God, what is my tools? What are the tools that you've given me that I can make things better? What can I do? How can I express the spiritual skill set you've given me so I can make my people better? If you're African American, and if you're not African American, how can I speak up and cry loud and spare not and make the lives of my African American friends and Christian brothers and sisters, how can I make their lives better? That's what Jesus did. He didn't need to be saved. He came and made the sacrifice for you and me. So how much more, how can you say you love God who you don't see when you withhold the needs that your brother needs? You withhold the bread or the support that they need, and you withhold it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't. Because guess what? We got to give an account for that. God knows the conversations he's had in your heart to speak up, and then you answer, well, yeah, but that's going to cost me. It's going to cost me contracts. It's going to cost me a job. It may cost me friends. Okay. It may cost ridicule. Pay the price. Because God says anybody that follows after him, he said, he that comes to God must first believe that he is. And he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So let's cry out for any form of injustice, whether it's African American, and just like we cry out for abortions, those children that are unborn that we're murdering every day throughout our lives, throughout America and other countries. We cry out for the voiceless. So if you have a voice that you can cry out for anybody that is oppressed or that are dealing with situations that they don't have a voice. Some people don't have a voice where you are. You have to speak out where your voice is. My wife, when we were at a large church here in Grand Rapids, and she was one of the only African Americans on staff, she had to cry out in situations because she was the only voice there. She had to cry out and she had to speak up for other people that didn't have a voice in that conversation. If African Americans don't have a voice in a white conversation, you as a friend of African Americans, speak up. Don't let them talk about African Americans, and vice versa. We're not supposed to be talking about people adversely if we love one another. Anyway, yeah, we have to work on that. So this is Robert Sims with today's Peace Talk. I want you to be at peace today. Don't allow these circumstances and situations to rob you of your peace. Your peace is a gift from God. And again, it doesn't mean you have peace and don't do something and are not proactive and active. But it does mean that it's a place in your heart that you're content and satisfied in the place that God is leading you in the right way. So don't allow it to penetrate you in a place where you feel hopeless and helpless. So this is Robert Sims today with today's Peace Talk, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for waving. Thank you. We're going to continue this conversation tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And I thank you all for being on. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.